So a couple things. When we talk about innovation, so I'm going to do some general things. So innovation is a word right now that is so overused, right? So there's a Dodge truck commercial out there, and as they're talking about Dodge and being innovative, it has an 11-inch screen in the dash. That's not innovation. That's ordering a bigger screen than you had, right? It's called incremental innovation, right? Incremental innovation needs to happen, but it's not exactly astounding, right? It doesn't make people want to spend a lot of money. And you can't use the word innovation for something that's just a wee little better than what somebody else is doing. That's not really innovation, right? Innovation takes a leap forward, right? That's what we're always looking for, is that your idea takes a big leap forward in whatever field, whatever problem you're trying to solve. So I'm blessed by Steve Blank, the god of the business model canvas and the Lean Launchpad, that I'm a certified Lean Launchpad instructor, which means I know the business model canvas backwards and forwards. So is Dr. Steve Canfield, who's mechanical engineering, which that is the worst picture of Steve ever. I would not let him into the country if that was on his passport. That doesn't look like him at all. I don't know how old that picture is, but I noticed that when I pulled this up today to edit it. I was like, I wouldn't guess that as Dr. Canfield at all. So you're about to go through something that what we've done is over the years developed. So there's a dose of academic, but we're trying to make it more of a bigger dose of real world. The people I work with every day, right? So we're going to try to teach you things that you've never done before. You're going to be asked to do things you've never done before. We get students as, I don't know business, I'm a nursing major. Guys, we're not saying you need a CPA license. So can you add and subtract? Let's assume most of you in this room can read and add and subtract. You'll be fine if you can do those two things, right? Don't get afraid of the parts you can't do. What else should you do if there are parts you can't do or don't have time to do? Go recruit partners that know how to do that and will do that. That's what entrepreneurs do, right? I know how to run a company. I don't know a thing about building medical equipment. Therefore, I need a partner that has the expertise to build the equipment, and I'll go raise money and hire people and do all those things. So, interdisciplinary. Go find people, and literally there is nothing wrong with stalking the halls. One of our best teams ever, that's how he found his programmer for his piece of software, is he stood in the halls in the computer science department and asked everybody, who's the best programming student here? And they all went, oh, that's Zertesh, right? Everybody knows that. And he's like, where do I find Zertesh? And he did. And so he partnered with him and they won a year and a half later. So don't be afraid to do that. That's what happens in the real world. Is very few entrepreneurs do very well alone. I'll just be real honest with you. This is too hard. Occasionally, but it's kind of more of a lightning strike. So for years and years and years, and I meet with about 500 entrepreneurs a year, including you guys all the way. So in the last 2 years, we had a 10-year-old take one of our programs, and we had an 81-year-old take one of our programs. So we pretty much cover a pretty wide gamut. We've done everything from painting custom fishing lures in the basement to working with people on what could be the latest battery technology in your Tesla, right? So we cover the whole gamut. So what we want to do in EagleWorks is give you a little taste of it, right? And learn a system that is now proven to produce better chances in entrepreneurship, right? Because what we know is the best entrepreneurs in the world, the failure rate over 3 years is somewhere between 60 and 80%, according to what report you read, right? This is really hard. So now tell me what's the difference so since I'm at a very technical school, what's the difference in an inventor and an entrepreneur?
Inventors have to learn basically what they're going to create, whereas an entrepreneur finds different people that can do the job and comes up with an idea potentially.
Right. So inventors usually are very good at solving the problem, building the physical thing or the software or whatever. But that's a totally different skill set of what it takes to actually build a company and get this thing out into the world. So if you have the greatest invention ever that nobody ever knows about, what's going to happen? Will it make any change in the world at all?
No.
Doesn't matter how good your invention is, a lot of times, if you don't get it out into the world, nobody cares, right? So you've done all this work, and there are inventions laying everywhere across the United States and the world, for that matter. Great inventions that never went anywhere. So, how many of you have heard the word business plan? Michael just used it, right? So, a business plan traditionally is taught in business schools. It's somewhere between 40 and 60 pages of a great big guess of what you're going to do over 5 years. And our idea of a business plan, to be real honest with you, here's what we say. So you take your initial guesses that you thought was going to happen, how many sales you were going to get, how big the market was, all those things, all of which are what? A hypothesis, a guess. None are proven. Then you project it out through the magic of spreadsheets for 5 years. So now you've taken an unproven guess and projected it out to be 5 years old. We call that a fairy tale, because now it's guessing completely out of control. You don't know anything when you start. So in the startup stage, you're actually in search mode. You're not in business mode. Not yet. And you got to consider some business things. But you got to figure out, so the business model canvas is 9 sections on one sheet of paper where you use very short notes. You don't have to use complete sentences. We're not running these by the English department at any point to see if they are grammatically correct. It's quickly to get down ideas and say, what's my assumption and what do I need to know to prove that assumption right or wrong? It's the scientific method. Same thing you learned in 3rd grade, right? And then based on what I learned, by finding out the answers to my test, I may change my assumptions, right? Because they should get better and better and better and zero down to now we're on to something. So this is kind of the gold standard in Silicon Valley, in New York, wherever. Most of this work was done at Stanford. I don't think she mentioned that part of being a UIF is you get to go hang out a day at Google campus, and there's all kinds of cool things in addition to just being at Stanford. It's a way fun trip. So this kind of doesn't replace the business plan. This is a place to start that if it works, you'll get the information you need to do a business plan that actually has a little bit of evidence in it. Does that make sense? So this should move quick. You should change a lot. Don't worry about it. It's a thought process that we try to keep you organized. My board of directors is 8 very successful entrepreneurs in the region, and I've asked them multiple times, how many of you ever did the 60-page business plan that the MBA program teaches you how to write? Does anybody want to guess how many of my board members have ever done one of those? 0, right? So they've got a couple pages of notes, and so then once they got to where they needed to borrow a couple $1 million, they had to learn how to write a business plan, or at that point pay somebody to do it, because that's what the bank asked for. And so they did one because the bank wanted one, and the bank takes it. Oh, we got it. Puts it in a file cabinet, and we'll never look at it again after they close on your loan, by the way. So any of these should be living documents. If it's not changing every day according to what you know today versus yesterday, then it's a waste of effort, right? So that's what these things have to be. So it's kind of based on lean. The engineers in the room may have had some lean manufacturing classes. And so, what's the least money I got to spend, the least time I got to spend, the least prototype I've got to build to prove or disprove I'm getting somewhere, right? So, you can get out of the rain with an umbrella, a tent, or a house. Do you want to spend the money to build a house first, or you want to start with an umbrella? So that's kind of the lean method of thinking, is let's start with an umbrella, because we don't have any money and not much time. So how do we get to a business model? And a business model is simply a statement of who is the customer, what problem are we solving, what value do we provide to that customer, and how are we going to do it? You know, are we going to sell? Are we going to rent? Are we going to do all kinds of things? So he was talking about sometimes the innovation in a good idea is not the product. Sometimes it's an innovative business model. Anybody ever heard of Netflix? You know, they got rich the first round by renting videos instead of selling them and shipping them to your house. Same videos you could get anywhere else when there were still video stores and CDs. But their business model was totally different, right? You paid so much per month and you got to watch as many CDs as you wanted. You just shipped them back and forth. It was a shift. It was an innovative business model for that time. What about software? What's been the big shift in software in the last 10 years? You guys are too young to know this, right?
Applications.
How you buy it. Very little software is out there that they sell you the software anymore, right? It's called software as a service, the SaaS model. So instead of me charging you $800 for Office, Microsoft Office package, I sign you up for $20 a month forever, and you access it through the cloud. So that's two completely different business models of me selling you a product versus basically leasing it to you on a monthly basis. So that's an innovative business model. It totally changed how software is done. Because I don't know of anything right now that you go buy the software and install in your computer. I guess there are a few out there somewhere, but I don't know what they are. So, again, a living document, this answers critical questions, not all the details, right? We're not trying to get into the deepest, darkest details that we won't know possibly for years. You're trying to move quick and figure out, is this thing got legs? Can it go somewhere? Is this an idea anybody cares about, right? So what we all do in our head is I want to solve a problem for somebody, and I know the problem, and I know the solution they need, but yet I've never talked to them. Do you see a problem with that theory? Yeah, so a lot of this is based on how do you find out what people really want, not what you think they want. So very critical information, and it's not really the long drawn out. So this is it. You want to pass these around? I think there's like 25. It might not be enough. This is a big crowd.
It's available on the EagleWorks website as well.
Is it my ravishing good looks that made the crowd show up, or the free food? So I got to guess on what it is. How many of you have competed in EagleWorks before? Anybody in this room? Cool. All right. You're going to feel like it's an unfair advantage when people come along that have been in it before. It is. First off, there's no such thing as an unfair advantage. There's only advantages or there's not. Fair has nothing to do with it. That's how the business world works, right? Now there's ethics and there's illegal, but an unfair advantage because I'm smarter than you is not unfair, or because I work harder than you is not unfair, or because I have experience is not unfair, right? So some of you, actually we've had almost a first-time entrant win, I think, every year. So there's by no means a clean sweep of people that have done it before.
Except for Giga Lunch.
No, but I mean, every year there's been somebody new. It wasn't people that had all the winners had done it the year before.
Yeah.
So you're going to be judged on this, right? There's not a set, it's not a perfect world. Because you know who's judging you? Human beings. And they fall in love with ideas that may not be the best technical idea, but it meant something to them. Or they understood it, or they felt sorry for the handicapped kid that you're making their life better. Whatever it is, right? So don't get upset. We're going to prepare you for that, right? Because this is how the real world works. Is you got to get ready and do the best you can. Don't get upset. You're going to get hard questions. Have you talked to them yet about It's 7 minutes and then 5 minutes of Q&A. All right. So you win it in the 7 minutes and you lose it in the 5 minutes Q&A. Just be real honest with you. That's pretty much turned out to be the truth. And so if a judge hits you with a question that you absolutely cannot answer, that all the judges then decide was glaringly obvious and you should have run across by this point, that's going to kill you. I'll just be real honest with you. And it happens. And it just is what it is. But we see every day in these 500 or 600 contacts with entrepreneurs is they come in and I've got the greatest idea ever. And while they're sitting on the other side of my desk explaining their idea, I am Googling it. And nobody's ever thought of this before. And I'm Googling it and I pull up 7 other people doing the same thing while I'm sitting there talking to you. All right? So please, that's what Michael was talking about. Do that research up front. Doesn't mean you shouldn't do what you want to do. But we get lots of people come to us and there's no competition. A cupcake shop, there's no competition. So what she was really saying at that time, there was not a cupcake shop in Cookville. Is there competition for her cupcake shop? Yeah. Convenience stores sell cupcakes. Walmart sells cupcakes. Kroger sells cupcakes. But I have no competition. Yeah, you did. Right? Not everybody that ever wants a cupcake is going to come to you. Even though you have convinced yourself they're going to, they will not. Right? So we're going to get into this a little bit. So I try to do this, and this is really hard. Andrea changed it to a portrait landscape instead of landscape, so it made it really hard to fit on a slide now.
This is also on the website.
Yeah, I didn't know if you guys had this. So this is kind of the rubric of this is what the judges are looking at. All right? So they're going to grade you on 1 to 5 points in each of these areas. So it's what, 6 sections now?
7.
6 or 7? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
I
So total of 30 points. All right? And the grading is 1 is okay, they're clueless. Right? And 5 is, man, they nailed it. Right? And then, of course, 2 through 4 are different steps of that. So the first thing you're going to talk about, and that's really hard to see, is did you identify the problem? Right? Did you identify a real problem? Judges are thinking that way. Is this a real problem or did you assume it was a problem? And as we get into the business model canvas, I'll refer back to this. You've identified a real customer. Again, everybody comes to us. What's your market? Everybody. Everybody's going to want my thing. No, they're not. Right? All 7 billion people in the world are going to write you a check tonight, right? Oh. No. You've got to figure out what your real market is. There is nothing that everybody wants short of air and water. Right? And even though Coke and Pepsi sell a lot of water, there's other ways to get it. So, have you identified an innovative and creative solution? And have you developed some very minimum viable product, right? Something that is a proof of concept at least that shows you could do it. So we had a team 5 years ago that basically came up with an idea that broke all of the law, and it was Dr. Stratz who finally caught it, is we didn't have any chemical engineering judges in the group that judged them in the prelims. Well, their idea broke the laws of thermodynamics. It could not be done. They got into the finals. Now, they didn't win anything in the finals, but luckily, Dr. Stratz comes just before the final starts and tells the judges, guys, that can't be done. If they figure out how to do that, we will probably start a long-lasting nuclear reaction that destroys the world. So that, let's say for now, that can't be done. And so they didn't have a prototype and they were making claims that were totally outrageous. And we will call you out on that, by the way. So you got to be able to come up with some kind of minimum viable solution. Market size. So this is kind of the business size. So how big is the market, right? So Who has an idea for a product, a hard product? Anybody working on that in here? Anybody? You want a product, something that makes a noise when you drop it. It's not software. Okay, what is it?
We're doing cover at university owned student operated umbrella sharing service.
Okay, umbrella sharing service. So what would be their total market? Is it everybody in the world?
No.
Is it everybody in the United States? No. So we've already cut the number by 90% by saying it's what?
College campuses.
College campuses. So faculty, employees, students on college campuses. Well, that's a way different total market than saying everybody. And you don't have to get this down to say there's, 300,992 people. No. But we want you to have some idea that if they would pay $2 a month to rent an umbrella, and there's roughly 600,000 people on colleges' campuses, what percentage of those would actually pay for this service? That's what we're trying to get you to. It's not an exact science by any stretch of the imagination. Do a little research on what you think the real market is. Because you can't say, it's $60 billion a year in renting umbrellas is my total market. No, it's not. With what we know when we hear that, it's probably 6 million, right? So you're only off by a multiple of a few thousand. So don't do that. Nobody's going to say you're off by $2,000, but don't be off by 100 million, right? So go to market. What does that mean? What does a go to market strategy mean? How are you going to get it out there? How are you going to advertise it? What is your web? How are they going to know it exists? What kind of relationship are you going to have with your customers? You're going to sell it, you're going to rent it, you're going to ship it, you're going to pick it up, you're going to do it through brick and mortar stores, you're going to sell it online, all of those kind of things. How do you actually get this thing out into the market? That is a go-to market strategy. And the answer is not, we're going to have a website and put it on social media. Nobody ever thought of that. You're really way ahead of the curve. Only everybody in existence is doing that. Think about, how do I really get it out there, right? Do I partner, if I'm selling car seat covers, do I partner with Ford and GM to sell through their dealerships? That's a go-to market strategy, right? It's not necessarily that I have the world's greatest website. Because the first question we say when you say I'm going to have a website and I'm going to put it on social media is, how do you drive traffic to your website? Just having a website doesn't mean anything anymore, does it? You got to be able to drive traffic to that website or you have nothing. So that's a go-to-market strategy. And then the revenue model. You wouldn't believe how many people come to us with an idea and have never sat down and said, am I going to sell it? Am I going to lease it? Am I going to make it part of a package? There's a million ways to get revenue, right? Maybe it's just strictly technology I license to a large company to put in their products. So revenue models can be a lot of different things. Most entrepreneurs we see on an invention level think they're going to go build a huge factory and manufacture millions of things. Maybe. Welcome to 10 years and hundreds of millions of dollars. And you actually get in the manufacturing business? How about contract manufacturing? All right. So, again, think about those kind of things. Social impact. So this is kind of a separate part of EagleWorks that we decided to build in years ago and have stuck with it. So this is strictly for explain to you how we got there. So some things are great social entrepreneurial ideas. They help people, they help change the world. But there may not be a very good business model for that, right? Nonprofit kind of things, those kind of things. So you're going to suffer in the judging if you're one of those on the business part, revenue models and those, even though you still have a revenue model. I run a nonprofit for the first time ever. It does not mean nonprofit is not a business model, it's a tax status. I still have to get income and I have to pay expenses, right? But this is a place that you can get extra credit for huge social impact, even though it may not be the greatest investment ever. Does that make sense? Because we saw some great social impact ideas, and in just the general business part of this, they got robbed of coins. And it's very much according to the judges, right? We don't know what the judges are thinking. So that's why it's there. And then the last part is, can you present it? Can you tell the story? Do I understand who your customer is, what the problem is, and what you're doing to solve it? And, can it make money? Can it actually happen? Right? So there's your 30 points. So let's move to the business model canvas. So when you look at the business model canvas, my main job here tonight is not making an expert business model canvas, but how does it relate to that judging blueprint? All right? So let me go down to the business model canvas. So I don't get ahead of myself here. Do I have a whole canvas anywhere? So kind of when you look at that, the right side, these 4 boxes and this box are what we would say that's the make money side of the business model canvas. So if you want to look at traditional business accounting, you have revenue or income or whatever you want to call it. And then you have expenses and capital costs. And so this is making money, this side's spending money, typically, right? That's true in a lot of situations. So the first thing, how many of you have a cell phone? That's a pretty stupid question in today's world. How many of you have an iPhone? How many of you have a Droid? All right. Who wants to be the iPhone representative? Why did you buy an iPhone instead of a Pixel or a Samsung or whatever?
I had used the Apple iPod before I got a smartphone, so I knew the interface of using iTunes, and it was also kind of the, yes, you could say that social representative item. I was in high school, it's kind of like you were cool if you had an Apple iPhone.
All right. Why did you buy a Droid? I'll let Andrea answer.
Because the camera's better and I hate that.
Both phones do almost exactly the same thing. What did I just prove?
That we're all
Different value propositions to different customers, right? If you have a 3-month-old baby, diapers are very important in your life right now. You will buy diapers. If you're in college, and you're practicing safe sex, you probably don't put much value on diapers right now, right? I've always said toilet paper can have huge value at certain points in life. Normally when there's none where you are at, right? And so the value proposition is simply this. Most inventors, engineers, I'm an engineer by training, we like to build things. And we mostly like to build things that we like. Recipe for death as an entrepreneur. Make sure you're building things that has value to your customer, right? So what she just said, in her mind, the value of an iPhone is number 1, social status. I wouldn't say that's number 1. But really the big value to iPhone is their design, the ease of use, and being able to sync across multiple devices and do absolutely nothing. Pop in your Apple ID one time and it syncs forever. You never have to do anything. What's the value to a Droid user?
Same thing.
Freedom of
Free.
software.
Right? Again, 2 totally different value propositions. I have a Pixel right now, so I've had both, and Apple does great stuff, but I don't like being chained to Apple, right? I'm too much of a rebel, so I don't want everything to be controlled by you. So when we say value proposition, it's not to you, it's not to your mom, It's to who your potential customers or users will be. What is the value to them? Because that's what people pay for, right? So I've sold hundreds of millions of dollars worth of stuff in my lifetime. And you know what? No customer ever asked me in these negotiations. There's lots of things they never ask me. But one that's very important to you right now, you hear all the time, right? Nobody has ever asked me where I went to college or what my GPA was. Because what do they want to know? What does this thing do for me that I'm willing to pay you for? That's the value proposition. So until you have a value proposition, you don't have an entrepreneurial anything, right? You have an academic study in invention, right? If you don't know who your potential customer, and you can be wrong, but you'll be on the same planet at least, right? So that takes customer segment. Who are my customers? Who will buy and use this? So I've already worked with a couple people in here, talked to them about. So most of you don't know what a heart attack is, but if you have a heart attack, there's an enzyme that shows up in your bloodstream called troponin, and as an indicator of heart attacks. Who would be having an indicator for that quickly? Who would want that device? Who would use it? Who would pay for it? Doctors, maybe. Who else? It's 3 a.m. I'm having a heart attack. My wife has called the ambulance. Who wants to know whether troponin is showing up in my blood system? People over 50.
Those are your point. It's the ambulance people who come and get you.
Right? Emergency room doctors and EMTs are probably the first big customer segment. I'm not a medical guy. I just want you to save my life. I don't care. I may not know what troponin is. So, now here's an interesting conversation. When you go into things like medical devices, who else are customers you have to satisfy for this thing to make it into the real world? The FDA, you'll do that before you can ever sell one. But once you are able to sell them, who else do you have to answer to? Insurance, right? In the United States, if Medicare does not pay for it, you are going out of business. So you have to prove to them that it's good enough and saves enough lives that Medicare will pay for it. And basically, once Medicare approves it, all the other insurance companies do too. It's kind of how the world works. But so you have a lot of different customers there. And if you forget one of those, you can be, great pun here since we're talking heart attack, you can be dead on arrival after you've gotten your patent and had a big party, but nobody's going to buy your thing, right? So that's what we're talking about. You got to understand who your customer is. And we want you to go a little bit deeper. Because here's the one we get a lot. Let's go with the healthcare idea. Hospitals are my customers. Okay? My dad is a purchasing agent at a hospital for 26 years, so I know this world a little bit. I'm sure it's changed tremendously since you've retired. But how do you sell something or get them to use a hospital? How do you sell to them? You stand in the parking lot and go, "Hey, hospital, this thing's awesome. You want one?" Is that how you do it? Who's your customer? Board of directors has nothing to do with what a hospital buys. Absolutely zero. Who's one of your customers? Me? Nurses. But let's not go with just nurses. Probably ER nurses. Once you've gotten to the hospital, actually, there's lots of ways for you to test this. It's kind of one of the things we're finding out, right? So now maybe we need a quicker way inside the hospital. It could be better. We don't know that from a technical standpoint yet. But how about the ER directors and the purchasing managers? And really, we want you to put a face with your customer, right? So let's go with the idea of theirs of EMTs on an ambulance. You're 40 miles from a hospital. What does an EMT do all day? When would they use this? How often would they use it? All those kind of things. Put a face on your customer. How many of you know what the word empathy is? What does empathy mean?
Putting yourself in other people's shoes.
Putting yourself in other people's shoes. So really great entrepreneurial ideas are able to use empathy to get in their customers' shoes and figure out, man, how often do they use this? What problems does it save for them? How hard is the package to open? All those kind of things in an emergency situation. Opening the package can be a really bad issue. So all these things, so put yourself in the shoes of who you think, at least for now, are your customers. That leads to good products, right? Don't build what you want to build unless you're going to be the one using it all day. But if you think anybody else needs to be a customer, you better build what they want and provide value to them. Now, quickly, that is about 50% of what you're going to do in EagleWorks, because you don't have enough time. You're doing this in a few weeks. You don't have time to totally flesh out the whole business model canvas. You just don't, all right? So don't try to. But what we want you to do is sweat this part, the customer and the value provided to the customer. We want you to get as far as you can in that world, right? Then, so you see the section here of channels. So what is a channel? That could be distribution channels. It could be advertising channels. It could be manufacturing channels. It could be all kinds of things. What are all the other things I need? It could be shipping, right? So if I sell this thing, how do I ship it? Am I going to sell it on Amazon, let them fulfill the order? Am I going to have a warehouse that I ship it and UPS comes every day? You know, that is a channel you got to think about. Is how do I get it to the customer, whatever it is, right? So if it's software, you know, am I going to use Microsoft Azure? Am I going to, cloud host it with AWS? How am I going to do this? Because that all affects how you're going to do this at some point. So customer relationship. The reason we tell it in this order is you can't really separate these four things, but you got to start with customer and the value to the customer. Because customer relationships are strictly that. What does our customer relationship look like? Is it online? Do we have an 800 number they can call for service? Do we have retail outlets that they can go to and get their problem solved? So there's not just the sales customer relationship. How do we let them know we exist at all? How do we advertise, right? How do we market? But there's also the ongoing customer relationship, right? There are very few things that you just sell and never have to service if you want money from them more than once, right? And you do. You want recurring sales if you can at all. So all that has to do with the customer relationship. Right? How are we going to keep them happy? Once we get them, how are we going to keep them happy? And part of that, which people don't understand as first-time entrepreneurs, the most expensive customer to get is a new one. The most value to a company are repeat customers. They're very profitable because you're not spending a lot of marketing money to get them back, but you had to spend customer service money to get them to stay and come back. Right? So how do you take care of your customers? You ever bought anything that you were strictly unhappy with and got crappy customer service? Are you going to go give them your money again? No, you're not. So you have to think about those things. The left side, and then that follows down into revenue, right? So I got to have all these things in order to get their money, right? The point of entrepreneurship is to get somebody else's money into your bank account, right? It's not a business if it doesn't do that. I cannot, one of the things that's funny in universities is sales is a 4-letter word, right? Nobody wants to be a salesperson. Find me a company that doesn't sell things. I've been doing this 35 years and I haven't found one yet. So if you think you're ever going to work for a company or start a company that doesn't sell things, I think you're probably wrong. right? How many of you want to work for Nissan? Come on, enough engineers in here. Who wants to work for Tesla? Does Tesla sell things? Yeah. Do they care whether the engineers know whether they sell things? Yeah, they do, right? And so engineers and all those people that aren't in sales, you don't get paid from God. You get paid from the money that sales generates. So if your company is not generating sales, you get this cool little email that says, as of next Friday, we'll no longer need your services. You know, we're laying off 2,000 people because we don't have enough sales to pay you. So sales matters. I don't care what world you're in. Hospitals sell, everybody sells. If hospitals, I had a hospital administrator tell me they weren't in sales. I'm like, then why in God's name do you have billboards? You just bragging? You spending $10,000 a month just to brag? You're in sales. You compete with other hospitals. Say it. Any of you married in this room? Full-time, long-term, significant others? How's that? We'll go with that. Michael knows my point here. Do you have different hobbies and like different sports and have different television shows you like to watch? If you've ever gotten to control the remote for more than 10 minutes, you're in sales, right? So you talk them into letting you control the remote. So actually the whole point, if you got married, you were in sales, right? You had to sell yourself for a while. So, you know, it really works that way. And you better be pretty good at customer service or then you're going to be divorced. So, you know, sales is everywhere and sales is not a bad word. In entrepreneurship, you have to have sales. Companies that fail, this is a real misnomer. There are a lot of people put stuff out there. Here's the 11 reasons companies fail. Well, the real truth to companies, now there's exceptions. Anybody know the word Theranos? Heard of that company in the last 3 or 4 years? This lady with her PhD in microbiology, was it, Michael? So developed a blood testing machine that was about the size of the shoebox. And I'm going to put them in every drugstore. I'm going to put them every, oh God, is that breakable?
No, there's a lot of blood.
Okay.
Of all the things I'm gonna do.
So it's a little bigger than a shoebox. We're going to put it in every drugstore. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. We're going to do that. Little bit of problem. She raised $156 million. It didn't work. She sold them, was actually putting them in drugstores, and the FDA sent her a nice little note that said cease and desist, and we're charging you like 11 counts of fraud. It was the largest crater in Silicon Valley in the last 10 years. It was actually more, I think by the time they shut her down, it was like $600 million invested. It all went down the tubes, right? So, got to be able to solve a real problem, and she could not. Revenue streams. So again, it could be rent, it could be sales, it could be lots of things. So let's switch to the cost side. We don't want you to kill yourself here because you're too early in your product to be able to really say what it's going to cost you to build your thing, right? Because you got to have a profit built in. So if it costs you $2 to build your widget you're going to sell, you're probably going to need to sell it for between somewhere $4 and $8, right? That's another thing we get is we have people come to us all the time. It's going to cost me $4 to build it. I'll sell it for $5. I'm going to make millions. No, you won't be open 6 months. At a 20% profit margin, you won't have enough cash flow to pay your electricity bill in about 120 days. So you got to understand at the early level that probably about 20% of the sales cost is what you need to be making this thing for, right? Because there are a lot of layers in between that you don't understand yet. But, you know, there are distributors and wholesalers and all kinds of people that need to make 20%. So by the time you get to the end, what it costs you to make it, you're probably going to sell for 3 to 5 to 6 times what it costs to make it. It will be the retail price. So don't get too bogged down in the cost. You need to be reasonable. We want you to somehow have an idea that it's $10 to make it, not $400. right? Because then you can say, I can sell it for $50 or $40 or whatever, and not come back and say, whoops, I can't sell it for $40. I got to sell it for $500 or $600 or whatever. So we want you to get, again, as close as you can, which a little work on Google will help with that a lot of times. And so some mentors and professors can also help you with that kind of thing. You know, just a wild guess of cost. Here's something that does apply to the rubric is key activities. So what are the most important things I need to be working on? Right? One of the things we see a lot is they spend weeks and weeks and weeks coming up with their corporation name and a logo. Nobody cares but you at this point. Make it something cool. Important EagleWorks tip, name your team something other than Team 7. Give it a cool name. I'm telling you, the judges don't, they're like, you didn't even come up with a name. They're gonna mentally tag you for that, right? You know, it doesn't matter what the name is. But come up with a name. But key activities, what are the things I really need to be working on? The questions I really need to answer, maybe technical, maybe money, it could be a lot of things. And then key partners. In almost any entrepreneurial venture, the key to success is who can I partner with, right? Can I partner with Amazon and have them totally sell and distribute this thing for me and all I do is make it? Maybe. That's a way to do it, right? So if I'm going to make a piece of medical equipment, maybe I'll go partner with Medline and they do all the sales and distribution and shipping for me. I just sell it to them as a wholesaler. All right. So again, that's part of your go-to-market strategy, but it's also part of partners you need to make this thing work. And then key resources, right? And so we think about key resources as it may be a building, a manufacturing plant. It may be materials. You may have a supply chain to deal with that's really complicated. You know, if we find out that it takes some totally rare earth metal that only comes from China to really build your invention, you've got a funky supply chain you got to deal with, right? You got to understand that. And so that's a resource. And so money is a resource. I need to raise capital, right? I have no money and I've got to spend $2 million to get this thing to market. Well, what's probably the most important resource that people obviously actually skip over? If you're going to build a company, what's the most important resource?
Employee.
People, right? I got to have key people that are really smart and will work really hard and that will buy into my culture as an entrepreneur and the idea of what we're doing here, that they'll understand the big picture. So the CEO's job, and so everybody wants to be, this is the last 10 years been the latest craze, you got to have a CEO, a CTO, a CIO, a COO, blah, 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 all the way down to CMO. There's a chief happiness officer. That was the latest stupidest thing ever. Which, hey, we want you to be happy, but do we really need a chief happiness officer? So, but there's nothing wrong with having those titles, but you need good people that can actually do it, right? And so the CEO's job is to keep the vision alive, right? And lead the team and be able to hire good people to follow. What's the COO's job? What does COO mean? Chief Operations Officer. So we tell everybody that's the company mom or dad. They keep the bills paid, the lights on, keep everybody out of jail, decently fed. A COO actually operates everything inside the company, right? And so what's a CTO? Chief Technology Officer. So you may have very deep technology that you need a PhD in microbiology to lead your product development. So they become the Chief Technology Officer. So probably for first-time entrepreneurs, the most skipped over resource is human resources, right? I got to have the team that can pull this off. And if you ever do this in the real world and get to the point, we help get you in front of investors all the way up to VCs that can write checks for millions of dollars. VCs really don't invest in the idea. They invest in the team because they know you don't yet know all the details, But if they have faith and the 5 of you are smart enough and they work hard at this, that you can pull it off. They invest in the team, right? Because you can have the greatest invention in the world and a bad team when you start trying to raise money, and they're not going to invest in it because they know it's going to crater based on those people, right? So we see that a lot. And so again, the cost structure, don't get too caught up in that. So let me go back to where this means something. All right, so how do we relate all this to the rubric? So when you see solution identified, that's the first part of the rubric. So the value proposition section of the business model canvas, key activities and minimum viable product are kind of the parts of the business model canvas that tie to that section of the rubric. So what is a minimum viable product? Right? So again, a minimum viable product can be strictly a line sketch that shows how it will work. It could be plans, design plans. That is a minimum viable product. Hopefully you can go a little past that, but according to how complicated your thing is, you may or may not be able to go past that. If you're doing software, what's a minimum viable product?
The way the software application will work.
Just a good wireframe and some basic idea of the language you're going to build it in, how you're going to host the back end. That's a minimum viable product. You don't have a working, completely built piece of software, but you need to be able to show that you can do 1 or 2 things that you're claiming to do and do it. There's all kinds of free wireframing software out there that makes a really cool show that, you know, shows the phone as a background and makes it look like you actually have a working app, but it's really just transitions and PowerPoint is really what it is. But you can kind of prove your concept that way. So, because it may take months to write the code to actually make it do this, this, and this. And so you don't have time to do that. But can you wireframe a decent MVP? And so minimum viable product means simply the very smallest, most inexpensive, fastest version of what will actually solve the problem with no extra features, no bells and whistles, and it doesn't need to come in 12 colors, right? So the minimum viable product that you can prove you're solving the problem you're trying to solve, that it works, right? So that we like to see, the judges want to see some kind of minimal viable product thought into this. Market size, go to market. We talked about, whoop, did I skip? Yeah, I did probably, didn't go back far enough. So the very first part is identifying a problem, right? So there's this idea of gain creators and pain solvers, right? So greater value is derived by how bad they want it or how bad the problem or the pain they have is, right? So if you have a headache and you're flying across the great United States and hopping from airports to airports, what you pay for 2 Tylenol varies widely from a Walgreens in downtown Boston to the gift shop at Logan International Airport, right? So if your headache is bad enough, you will pay $12 for those 2 Tylenol in that little impossibly hard to open package. But if your headache's not that bad, you'll just wait, right? So how bad is the pain leads to, that addresses a little bit of the value proposition you have. If you're solving huge problems for a customer set you can identify, they'll pay you a lot of money, right? So here's one of the things we run into, though, is you get into this idea of customer discovery, which is what we do in the I-Corps class here. So what you don't want with your ideas is as you keep going and going and going. So it uses a rated method of this, customer didn't care, or this, which is it's okay, or this. Where we die, and I did this with one of my startups, is I was getting a lot of this and a little of this, but I wasn't getting very much of that. So, I finished building the thing and then couldn't really sell it. I had to go back and rebuild what I was building. I wasted that initial version because it wasn't really solving a big problem for me. But once I met with enough people and figured out what the really painful problem was, that I changed it and started selling a lot of it. So does that make sense? When you talk about the problem, that goes to your value proposition. You gotta understand the problem before you can build a decent solution. Or, so again, there's solving the pain, or then there's filling a need, right? Some things just fill a need. It may not be painful not to have it, but it fills a great need that people want. And it still has a lot of value, right? It's a game creator, right? So manufacturing operations will spend money for software and tooling on two different things. Things that save them money, right? In the manufacturing process, I can make it for 15 cents less. I'll pay you a lot of money for that. Your software. What else do they do? So that's kind of a pain solver. They'll also pay you for gains, right? So you allow me to build it faster, you allow me to ship it faster, you allow me to increase my safety in the plant. Those are gains they will pay you for. Gains in efficiency a lot of times, right? They'll pay you for those gains. It may not have to be a pain, but it can be a big enough gain that I'll pay you a lot for. So if I'm selling these across the United States and I'm having trouble marketing it, if a marketing firm comes and figures out a way to increase my sales 3 times over, that is a big gain for me, and I'll pay you a lot of money for that. So you build value with solving pains or building gains. It's really what it boils down to. So try to think of it that way. Customer identified, really, do you have a true customer segment that sounds realistic, right? And so that's part of what you'll be. The solution identified, again, I've kind of proven that there's a value proposition here. Here's my solution to the problem that I think has value to the customer. So those are the parts of the business model canvas that meet it. And then the market size, go-to-market, revenue model. That kind of addresses customer segments, because if I've identified a customer segment, how many of them are there? Where are they? Where are they? How do I get in front of them? All those things. Then channels could be, how do I advertise to them? How do I ship to them? Because that all goes to the go-to-market and revenue model, right? Are we going to do free shipping? We're going to charge the customer for shipping. There's all that stuff goes into your revenue model. And you may or may not need to answer that, but you need to think about it in your pitch. And then revenue streams again. Am I going to sell it, rent it? How am I going to get paid? What's the basis here? Am I going to license it and get 6% of everything they use it in? That's what universities do. Any of you know the largest money-making thing that ever happened in the United States for a university? Happened in the last 3 years. The University of Wisconsin, it's a 9-year lawsuit. It was settled 3 years ago. The University of Wisconsin sued Apple. There was some technology inside the very first iPhone, which has now been built on for 13 years or whatever. How old is the iPhone? It's pretty old now. Turns out they won their lawsuit. The original check for settlement was $6.2 billion to the University of Wisconsin. They made trillions of dollars on iPhones. So it turns out the University of Wisconsin has the largest endowed research foundation in the United States right now, because they're getting about $1 billion a year to add to it from Apple. Because not only do they win the lawsuit, but they have to pay the licensing fee going forward. So every iPhone that sells, University of Wisconsin gets a check. So anyway, interesting stuff. So licensing can be a great revenue model. If you invent something that big companies want to use and you don't want to manufacture it, you don't want to sell it, you don't want to do all that stuff, you can license it to them. We call it mailbox money, right? So, once you get the licensing deal done and they start making it, all you do is open your checking account app once a month to make sure the deposit showed up. That's a pretty good life if you can pull that off. There are a couple of very wealthy entrepreneurs in Cookville who are living that lifestyle right now. So, social impact kind of addresses the value proposition. The value proposition could be social, right? Helps handicap, helps sick kids, whatever it is, and kind of understand the problem. And then the presentation story of what you're going to be graded on is kind of all of this, right? Because they're looking to go, did you understand these things? Did you answer them to some degree? Again, we teach the judges that you only been working on this for a couple of months while taking 20 hours of classes. So you're not going to be able to hammer this out to great detail like we would put one of our teams through before they go to pitch to investors, right? They got to have a whole lot more detail. But they want to see that you thought through this process a little bit. And that's where the rubric was generated from, right? So the original rubric, Michael's over there, the original rubric we had to work with was painful, right? It was like 32 questions. And I'll never forget, because I usually get a lot of the judges, and the first time I got all the judges, and we handed them that, and they went, what? You know, you've got to, back then the pitches were 12 minutes, and they're like, we can't even figure out how to fill this out in 12 minutes. You know, and so it was a train wreck. So this rubric has been developed in conjunction to the business model canvas and what we know works in reality. So we won't go into the rest of this slideshow. Questions? Have I confused you enough, or did that help? Yes.
What happens if you find a patent, for example, and there's like nothing in existence out there, there's patents for it, or let's say it's a classified patent that you can't use full review to see if it infringes upon what you're trying to create?
I'm not really sure what a classified patent is. It's a classified patent. How would you know it's even a patent?
Classified patents, they don't show you like details. They'll show you what kind of like the general structure, but they won't actually tell you how it works or anything like that.
Unless it falls under national security, I don't know if there's such a thing as a classified patent. Once a patent is issued, it's public. All the details are public, right? So I've never heard the term a classified patent. I'm sure the military probably has some things maybe, but I've never heard that. So if there's a patent out there, that means somebody else has already done it. Look at the patent, see if yours is different, right? It's what attorneys get paid for. It's called a prior art search, right? So when they're working, you're paying an attorney to file your patent. You're paying for them to do a lot of research. See if part of this stuff already exists. Now, is yours better? You know, quickly there's a short patent. So there's utility patents, which is kind of the broader coverage that you really, this is kind of the first thing in this domain. And then there are design patents. They're kind of perfections based on top of other utility patents, right? So, you know, you could patent an engine, and then there could be design patents that it's a 6-cylinder, better gas mileage, and still 8 cylinders, that kind of explanation. But if there's a patent already out there using, probably we spent 2 hours talking about this today. So using the same things you're talking about, you're taking the same approach, then you probably don't want to do it. The honest truth is, less than 2% of patents ever make enough money, the product that was patented, ever make enough money to pay the patent fees. Lots of patents out there, nothing's ever been done with. So, you know, investors want you to have a patent if you have something that is patentable, but that's not their first worry. All right? They really want to know, is there a market for it, and can you get a patent at some point, maybe if you need it. Investors really want to see sales, right? They want to see you can actually make this thing, it's like pay you for it. So, but if you should do a quick, Google patent search is pretty good. It's not the answer all. So does everybody understand what a patent is? So if you get a patent, does the patent office tell her to quit copying it? No. It's just the basis. It's a nice little certificate that goes on the wall that says, I have a patent. It's a basis for you to start suing anybody to stop them from stealing. So we see entrepreneurs worry so much about a patent, and we're like, I don't know, you got $10 million to generate the lawsuit to sue Samsung to tell them to stop? No. Awesome, then what good is the patent? Nobody defends it for you. And in case you've never worked with one, IP attorneys don't work for free. So they usually somewhere between, according to where you're at, between $500 and $1,200 an hour. And so, you need patents, don't get me wrong, but don't over sweat patents. Because odds are you got a long way to go to get a patent. So you can do provisional patents, that get you a year, kind of a flag in the sand that says I'm working on this. So there's lots of ways to get there. But if there's already a patent out there, that's a red flag, right? Read that patent, see how they're doing it. What can I do better? Right? Not using their stuff. Or maybe I am building on top of what they do. Right? God only knows how many patents are filed in mousetraps, right? They all kill mice, but there's lots of different ways to kill mice. And so, there's not really a utility patent on mousetraps or design patent. Any other questions? About the competition? Yes.
Would it be possible to present an idea in the competition that is based on a theory that it would actually take a good couple years of research to prove if it will work?
You won't get very far in competition. That's kind of like saying, my idea is to cure cancer. Write me the check. Thank you very much. You know what I mean? So if it's going to take years and years and years, honestly, you can't get any kind of minimal viable product.
So do we have to have a working prototype of that minimal viable product?
No.
You do not. But you gotta have something that shows that the judges are looking for something so they can decide, man, this is gonna take 7 years of hard scientific research and hundreds of millions of dollars of research. Right?
If you wanna ask us specifically about what you're thinking afterwards, we'll be happy to stay on.
So you don't have to build a complete 3D printer. You can do a little 3D printer that does 2 things or something. So that kind of, what else? So we have not run into many problems actually over the last 6 years, other than the one team that was breaking the rules of nature. That we've not had a lot of problems with this. So the judges are pretty good. So you understand the prelims, right, or ahead of time. So the prelims are where they root all this out. This usually doesn't happen in the finals. The prelims root these out. They may say, this is just way too early to prove whether you have a market at all. So that's why we're doing these other contests. They're like idea contests and things that you don't have to have in program.
What about with the agriculture innovation? Do you have a prototype of it, or is it
No.
the idea based?
I don't know
So
about
it's more idea based.
I don't know about it.
Okay.
It'll be, we can talk after.
I'll probably be
Anyone
doing the
else
business model canvas for them. They called me a couple of weeks ago. So, but I don't know any of the rules on that.
Michael has more information.
So the competition, like I say, so I guess Andrea's already explained kind of how it works. So the prelims are where the technical stuff gets rooted out. Because we got time. Again, the way the finals go is, man, there's going to be 6 to 8 teams up there, and once we say go, it's boom, 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 boom. And so the judges have 5 minutes, and they will be shut off. So the judges can take breaks and do a little research and things in the prelims. They still can only ask you 5 minutes of questions, really, but they can do some research before they really sit down and judge that. So, as I like to say, the bullshit detection is done in the preliminary rounds. And that's the way it should be. I go to these all over the country and help judges and all kinds of things. So that's done in the preliminary. What else? Like I say, have we helped understand the rubric? Is anybody confused on what you're going to be judged on? So don't get bogged down in the technology. Right? You need to get it to the point you can prove a little bit. But what they don't want in a presentation is most of these judges are not PhDs in chemical engineering. Right? So you don't give such a technical pitch. and things like that. They want to see these things that are on that rubric because that's what we teach them to judge on. It's still not perfect. Some of them are going to think you understand me. I mean, we've seen it. Two judges sitting side by side with two totally different backgrounds and give you a 5 on go-to-market strategy, and this one gives you a 2. Welcome to dealing with humans. So, we can't fix that. We try to. But part of it depends on their background. We've had judges that were physicians. And so if you got into the medical field, they had really great understanding, which can work for you or against you, right? So if you did really well and could answer the medical stuff, that really paid off for the team. It also allows that they have enough knowledge to ask some questions you may not be able to answer. So it can work for you or against you. We just have no idea of knowing that. One thing we saw happen last year is no matter what your idea, show that you've tested it somehow, your minimum viable product, some kind of decent test. You may actually have it in the product show, or we call that
The trade show.
the trade show.
Yeah.
But because the judges may ask, have you tested this on this? And if it's one of those things that's like so glaringly obvious that you should have tested it on your roommate, and you go, nope, they're going to ding you for that. I mean, you should have at least tested it on your little brother or something, So that's another thing we have seen pop up and get teams that just never occurred to them that they should have tested it at some way. And the other thing is, don't lie. We have had a team, and we don't know whether it was nerves or on purpose, but kind of answered the judges that they had a patent, and they did not. So they kind of led the judges to believe. How's that? And that's a no-no. So if they ask you something you don't know, say, great question, I don't know, but we'll try to find that out. All right? It's okay to say I don't know. Because between all of us and the judges and the faculty, if you lie, one of us will know. And then we will tell the judges, you lied. We're not going to let you get away with that. It's okay to say I don't know. One of our biggest winners had 2 or 3 I don't know. But man, I really need to figure that out, don't I? They had not thought of that. So, any other questions? You don't have to beat the business model canvas to death, but it's a way to organize your thoughts quickly. 1, 2, 3 words. Don't write paragraphs there, right? It's a way to just keep this organized so that you can get it down into that metric. And then what Michael was showing you is, so what we do is we don't really want you to do the full business plan anymore. That's called an executive summary is actually what you're doing. So it's short paragraphs. It's going to be what a lengthy one would be 3 pages, maybe 4.
The longest one I had last year, I think, was 11 pages, and most of them were 3 to 5.
Yeah.
So
So we'd like for you to be able to get it down to 3 pages. All right. Believe it or not, it's way harder to write a 3-page business plan than it is a 30-page business plan because you got to be focused on what you're saying. And the thing you will find, it's really easy to do a 20-minute pitch. It's really hard to do a 7-minute pitch, right? To get all your stuff in 7 minutes. So it makes you focus down on the important stuff. That's why we do it that way. Because most of the other, if you go to other competitions throughout the state or other states or other schools or whatever, it's going to be in that 7 to 8 minute format. A meeting with investors may be a 30-minute presentation and then 30 minutes of Q&A. But for most of these kind of things, it's 7 to 10 minutes. Go home. We will do some things. So as you see on the schedule, so part of what we'll do is help with some mentors. If you guys get, so here's the last piece. Don't get stuck on one thing that holds you up. Call all of us to help you get past these stuff.